Manila, Philippines. In a moment that would be etched into the nation's memory, a young Filipino was chosen for the first time to deliver the keynote address at the United Nations Global Youth Assembly in New York. The city buzzed with anticipation, and even the air seemed charged with possibility. The news flashed across every screen, from the neon-lit avenues of Manila to the quietest corners of remote villages. It was on everyone's lips, in every conversation, and on every device. For a moment, the entire country seemed to hold its breath, united in a rare collective pause. Mateo Cruz, just 22 years old and hailing from a small town in Laguna, was about to speak for an entire generation. His journey from humble beginnings to the world stage inspired hope in millions. This was the United Nations, a place where world leaders gather, where decisions are made that shape the future of nations. The gravity of the moment was undeniable. Filipinos everywhere felt a surge of pride mixed with disbelief. It was as if a dream long held but rarely spoken was finally coming true. We were used to working in the background, supporting others, not standing at the podium ourselves. This was new territory, but the headline was real. A Filipino would speak, and for once the world would listen. The story was no longer about someone else, it was about us. The announcement brought both celebration and anxiety. There was joy, but also a quiet fear of what might come next. Our English, shaped by centuries of history and colonization, was often a source of both pride and insecurity. We wondered if it would be enough. Could Mateo, with his Filipino accent and unique perspective, command respect on the world stage? Would his words resonate beyond our borders? His success would be our collective triumph. His failure, our deepest shared fear. The stakes felt impossibly high. In coffee shops, classrooms, and boardrooms, the conversation was the same: hope, worry, and an overwhelming sense of pride in what was possible. Mateo had the chance to change how the world saw us, to rewrite the narrative and show the strength and spirit of the Filipino people. The headline was just the beginning. The real story was about to unfold, and everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Backstage, the tension was palpable, the spotlight was ready, and the world's eyes were fixed on what would come. A nation waited, united by hope and anticipation. The world was watching, and for the first time, the story was ours to tell. Mateo grew up in a world where English was everywhere, on TV, in the voices of cartoon heroes and news anchors, in the laughter of sitcoms that filled his family's small living room. He heard English in the music that played on the radio, and saw it in the pages of his school books, where lessons promised a brighter future if only he could master the language. His parents, hoping for his success, would gently urge him, "Speak in English, anak. It will open doors for you," they said, believing it was the key to opportunity and respect. Mateo tried his best, but every time he spoke, his accent marked him as different, a reminder that he didn't quite belong. The first sting of shame came at age 7 when his American cousins visited and mocked his pronunciation, turning his words into a punchline. Their laughter echoed in his mind, telling him that his English was a joke, something to be laughed at, not admired. That feeling of humiliation haunted him through his school years, making him feel isolated even in a crowded classroom. He hesitated to speak up, his hand trembling, afraid that every word would invite ridicule or correction. Even teachers, sometimes with good intentions, corrected him in ways that made him feel small and exposed in front of his peers. The message was always clear: if you wanted to succeed, you had to sound less Filipino, to hide the traces of home in your voice. In call centers, agents were trained to erase their accents, to mimic American or British tones as if their own voices weren't good enough for the world. Judgment came from all sides: foreigners who expected perfect English, and fellow Filipinos who measured worth by how closely you could imitate the West. There was an unspoken hierarchy of accents, American and British at the top, Filipino at the bottom, shaping how people were treated and how they saw themselves. Mateo learned to shrink his voice, to speak softly, believing that no matter how hard he tried, it would never be good enough. He felt trapped between two worlds, Filipino at heart, but always told to sound like someone else, never quite fitting in either place. The shame became a constant, a quiet companion that followed him everywhere, whispering doubts late at night. Yet deep down, beneath the fear and self-doubt, he longed to be heard, to speak in his own voice and be accepted for who he was. He wondered if his voice would ever be enough, if he could ever find the courage to let it ring out without shame. For Mateo, the struggle was just beginning, but so was the hope that one day his voice would finally be heard. Shame didn't silence Mateo, it fueled him. He couldn't change his accent, but he could sharpen his words. After school he devoured books, filling notebooks with new vocabulary. He watched great speakers studying their rhythm and passion. Alone in his room he practiced speeches, searching for his own voice. When his school announced an oration contest, he poured his hopes and frustrations into his speech. He wrote about the Filipino youth, about resilience and dreams. He practiced relentlessly until the words became part of him. On contest day he faced the crowd, trembling but determined. His accent was unmistakably Filipino, but his words were powerful. The room fell silent as he spoke with passion and conviction. He wasn't mimicking anyone, he was himself. When he finished, applause erupted. He had won. More importantly, he had found his voice. The journey from shame to pride had begun. Mateo realized his voice mattered, and he was ready to use it. Winning the contest was just the start. Mateo entered debates and public speaking competitions across the country. Each event built his confidence and skill. He wore his Filipino accent as a badge of honor. His first international competition took him to Singapore. Surrounded by polished accents, old insecurities returned. But when it was his turn, he spoke with clarity and conviction. He shared ideas inspired by his hometown, using Filipino words like bayanihan. At first there was confusion, then understanding. Delegates leaned in, captivated by his passion. A British delegate praised him. "The passion you have is incredible." Mateo realized it wasn't about the accent, it was about the message. He embraced his voice, knowing it was his strength. The world listened, not to how he spoke, but to what he said. Mateo's journey was no longer just personal. He was becoming a voice for his people. And he was just getting started. Years passed. Mateo studied international relations, debated across Asia, and became a voice for Filipino youth. One rainy afternoon, an email arrived from the United Nations. He was invited to deliver the keynote at the Global Youth Assembly in New York. He read the message over and over, barely believing it. He thought of his younger self, silenced by shame. Every struggle, every victory had led to this. The honor was immense, but so was the responsibility. He would represent 20 million Filipino youth. Mateo called his parents, voice trembling. "Ma, I'm speaking at the UN." His mother cried tears of joy and pride. Mateo realized this was not just his journey, it was his family's, his communities, his nations. He carried their hopes with him. The world stage awaited. The boy who once doubted his voice was now its champion. Mateo's story was about to inspire millions. The journey from shame to pride was now a global one, and the world was listening. New York was overwhelming, skyscrapers, languages, cultures. At the UN headquarters, Mateo felt the weight of history. He met brilliant youth from around the world, each with polished international English. Old insecurities crept in. He overheard whispers. "He's the keynote speaker? His English is interesting." The words stung, pricking at his confidence. Alone in his hotel room, he doubted himself. Should he try to sound more American? Should he change his speech? He called his mother, voice shaking. "I don't think I can do this." Her reply was steady. "They chose you to sound like you. Your voice is our strength." Her words were a lifeline. Mateo remembered why he was there. He wasn't just speaking for himself, he was speaking for every Filipino who had ever felt small. The next day, he would step onto the world stage. He would speak from the heart, and he would do it in his own voice. The moment of truth had arrived. The General Assembly Hall was vast, filled with the world's leaders. The air was thick with anticipation, every seat occupied by someone who shaped the fate of nations. Mateo stood backstage, hands trembling, heart pounding in his chest. His name was called, echoing through the corridors of power. He walked to the podium, blinded by lights, facing a sea of nations. Every step felt heavy, yet he moved forward, determined. For a moment his mind went blank. The enormity of the moment pressed down on him and time seemed to slow. The whispers echoed. "His English is interesting." Doubt flickered in the eyes of some, curiosity in others. He remembered his mother's words, "Speak from your heart." Her voice, gentle and reassuring, gave him strength. He looked up as if seeing all the way home, to the shores and fields of his childhood, to the people who believed in him. His first words were quiet, hesitant, barely above a whisper, but they carried the weight of his journey. His Filipino accent filled the hall, each syllable a testament to where he came from. There was a shift, a stillness of expectation. The room leaned in, waiting for what he would say next. He paused, then chose to own the moment. He let the silence settle, gathering his courage. "I come from a nation of storytellers, dreamers, survivors," he declared. He spoke of fishermen rising before dawn, casting their nets with hope, of children learning to read by candlelight, of bayanihan, neighbors lifting each other up in times of need. He told stories, not statistics. He painted pictures with his words, inviting the world to see his people's resilience. His voice, once a source of shame, became his greatest instrument. Each word grew stronger, more confident. The room listened, not just to his words, but to the sound of his voice, to the emotion and truth behind every sentence. Mateo spoke with pride, conviction, and heart. He stood tall, no longer afraid of being different. The silence was broken by applause, a wave of recognition and respect that filled the hall. He had found his place on the world stage, his voice finally heard, his story embraced by all. As Mateo spoke, the hall fell into rapt attention. Delegates leaned forward, journalists stopped typing. His voice painted a vivid picture of his homeland and people. He spoke of hope as daily courage, resilience as necessity. "They tell us our voices are too small, our accent's not international," he declared. "But our voices are the sound of a billion dreams. Our accent is our history, our strength." Applause broke out, spreading across the hall. The Secretary General smiled, clapping with the crowd. Mateo finished, "Let us not be afraid of our voices, every voice matters, our time is now." He stepped back. Silence, then a standing ovation. Back home, millions watched, tears streaming, pride swelling. #Pinoy Pride trended online. News anchors called it historic. It was more than a speech, it was validation. A nation exhaled, finally heard. Mateo's voice echoed from New York to every Filipino home. The world had listened. The sound of shame was gone. Pride had taken its place. The impact was immediate. Mateo's face appeared on front pages worldwide. Journalists praised his message and authenticity. He hadn't changed his voice for the world. He made the world listen. Filipinos felt a surge of pride. The old shame began to fade. Young people posted videos in their own accents. #My accent is my story. Call centers rethought their training. Mateo's speech sparked a national conversation about language and identity. He returned home a hero, greeted by crowds and banners. He showed every Filipino child their voice was a superpower. You didn't have to erase your identity to succeed. Mateo's journey opened doors for millions. The sound of pride replaced the sound of shame, and now, every Filipino voice knew it mattered.